Alrighty, welcome to another monthly recap. This is for the month ending today, April 30th, 2024. So April showers bring May flowers. I love April. I love May. May's my favorite month, but April is a close second. Just beautiful out. We'll enjoy the green because it's only going to last for a few months. But as of today, April 30th, we just wrapped up a few days of rain, and I loved every bit of it. So I hope you all did too. So here's what's going on in April. Here's what's occurred in April. So we got some updated jobs numbers. They rebounded nicely, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Talk about that. Inflation is being extremely stubborn. Get into that. When is the Fed going to cut rates? The expectations have shifted. Going to talk about that extensively. And then the GDP, we got the first reading of quarter one GDP. That came in shockingly soft. And as you pick apart some of the data, there's a few pieces that pop out, jump off the page at you. Talk about that. Rates as a whole, mortgage rates, they went from around 6.875% to begin the month to about 7.375. We're talking about why. So let's get into it. So the jobs figures rebounded. If you recall, when we got the jobs numbers in March for February, they came in kind of soft. So we got the ADP jobs reports that came in like 140,000 jobs created when expectations for about 150,000, so a little bit softer. When we looked at the Bureau of Labor Statistics report, which is the second report we get, the BLS report showed 275,000 jobs being created in February. Again, we got that report in March. That was really good. That beat expectations of 200,000, but they revised the previous two reports down significantly. Minus 124,000 jobs for January, minus an additional 43 for December. So they went back, BLS, as they have been lately, and they went back and they revised a couple reports and they made them significantly softer. So those were the reports we got in March for February. Now, that's important because I mentioned there's been this tug of war going on, right? There's this tug of war going on. It's like Squid Games playing tug of war over a gigantic abyss. And the tug of war game that's been going on is, look, the Fed wants to keep rates elevated as they currently are, because if they do that, people are likely to save more money because your savings accounts are incentivizing you to save money, spend less money because your credit card rates are so much higher, and in doing so, the price of goods is going to start to come down. But they can't leave rates elevated for too long, or else it starts to impact the employment numbers, right? And the logic there is, well, great, if businesses are paying loans at elevated rates as well because of this Fed funds rate that's elevated, well, they no longer are going to have as much capital to hire new talent. So there's this tug of war that's been going on. And last month when I did this video, the tug of war was fairly balanced. Inflation was being stagnant and very stubborn. However, jobs numbers were not performing very well. And if you recall, the unemployment rate went from 3.7% to 3.9%. So again, this tug of war, it was fairly evenly balanced, which is why mortgage rates were doing so well. Relatively speaking, 6.875. How is that doing well? That's all relative to the 7.875% we had at the end of last year. So it's all kind of relative. This month, one side clearly is starting to win. Okay, and that's the side of, hey, look, we have these elevated rates, inflation is still being stubborn, and oh, by the way, jobs are performing well. So while we had these soft jobs numbers in February, March, those job numbers came in. March's jobs numbers, which we received in April, came in really strong. So ADP came in at up 184,000 jobs. Expectations again were for 150. BLS showed 303,000 jobs. Expectations were for only 200,000. Not only that, but finally when BLS went back and revised the most recent couple of reports, they actually added an additional 22,000 jobs. So the unemployment rate went from 3.7 to 3.9. Looks like this tug of war was fairly evenly matched. And then the unemployment rate ticked down from 3.9 to 3.8%. Bad news. Now, it's weird. And the reason I include this specific comic is because it's weird. Like, you see these jobs numbers and they all look like, hey, the jobs market's performing very well. But then you hear a lot of anecdotal stories of, very well qualified candidates not being able to land positions. So it's a little bit deceiving and confusing out there. A lot of people are saying, hey, look, the jobs market's doing great. But then if you talk to people on the street, they're like, yeah, it's not going as well as you think. I've been looking for work for months now. So I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. Talk about that a little bit briefly again when we get to the GDP, because GDP did come in awfully soft. So, all right, let's look at inflation. Inflation, like I said, has been rather stubborn, and I really like this Comic. My consumer confidence has slipped, stubborn inflation and anxiety over a slowing economy. What next? Well, this is a good time to mention I'm doubling my rates next month. So, inflation is proving to be extremely stubborn. Um, we can receive again three different inflation reports: consumer price index, producer price index, which is wholesale inflation, and then the Fed's favorite metric, which is personal consumption expenditures. Across the board, it's been extremely stubborn, way more stubborn than anybody would like to see. So consumer price index, CPI, headline rose 0.4%. That stinks. The year-over-year figure is at 3.5%. When you remove volatile food and energy components, came in at 3.8%. Again, very stubborn. Producer price index, wholesale inflation. We had seen some improvement there. Like last month's figures were not great, but this month's figures also were not great. Rose 0.2% in March, 2.1% year over year. Core increased to 2.4%. Again, not great. And then the personal consumption expenditures, PC, Fed's favorite measure. Headline, so all inflation rose 0.323% in March, increased to 2.71% from 2.5% year over year. The core rate, single most important. So there's like 6 different metrics in here. Headline, core, CPI, PPI. Really the one that the Fed really ultimately cares about is this one right here. Core increased 0.317. It decreased year over year from 2.84 to 2.82. But when they round out these numbers, you would have seen, headlines that say, PC remained the same. They just rounded 2.82% versus 2.84%. Like, what are we talking about? Here's the real problem. If you have this 3.317% increase in a month, if you were to take that and annualize it out and look at 12 months, you'd be looking at inflation right around 4%. That's double what the Fed wants. The Fed's been talking, just beating it like to the ends of the earth. They want 2% core PCE. They want 2% core PCE. At this current rate, if you took that and annualized it, it'd be almost double what the Fed wants. The Fed, in my opinion, is probably going to have to change that expectation. That expectation I've talked about in past videos, it's really, really flawed. The Fed never wanted to become public knowledge because they knew that once it did, it was no longer going to go from like, hey, this is our guiding light to, hey, this is our principles. Like these are what we're looking for. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is our target. We're not stopping until we get there. The Fed really didn't want that to become a public headline. They really did not want that to go towards the forefront of everybody's mind. But it escaped their closed room. It became public knowledge. And all of a sudden, that's the target. 2% core PCE. At this current rate, we're almost double than that. The Fed's going to have to change some of that expectation. But if you see strong jobs, as we just pointed to, and you see inflation being stubborn, it puts more and more chips towards the side of the table that says, hey, look, we should keep rates elevated for a longer period of time. Which gets to when is the Fed going to finally cut rates? I talked about last month. The Fed left funds rates unchanged in their meeting last month. They are meeting quite literally right now, and they're going to come out with those results tomorrow, May 1st. The expectation is that there's not going to be any additional rate changes tomorrow. So they're probably going to keep this kind of intact, 5.25% to 5.5%. Anything other than leaving rates as is would be a huge shock to the market. So I expect that tomorrow we'll hear, hey, look, no rate changes. The real question is, when is the Fed going to cut rates? And that's the real big question here. So as you saw last time, I pointed out this dot plot. Most members are still in favor of cutting rates, not one time, but multiple times in 2024. The guiding light, though, the prognosticators, the expectations are now, hey, look, we're probably not going to cut rates on the June 12th meeting. That was up to quite literally a couple weeks ago what everybody was expecting. That is no longer the case. People are now saying, it might be the July meeting, might be the September meeting before we actually see the Fed to start cutting rates. They're doing that because inflation is stubborn and unemployment remains really low and it actually decreased. So if you have strong jobs numbers, and you have inflation that's really stagnant, why not leave rates elevated for a longer period of time? This tug of war match that's been going on, one side right now is winning. It was a very good month for those in the camp, those hawks who won't say, hey, we should just leave rates elevated for a longer period of time. The doves are losing that tug of war match, unfortunately. So that's where we currently are. Let's talk about GDP. I really like this comic. No big deal, folks. We just fell short, a little short of expectations. And they missed the runway entirely. So expectations were for quarter one GDP to come in at 2.5%. It only came in at 1.6%. That is the slowest pace in 2 years. Worth noting, pointing out that personal spending fell short. That increased 2.5%. Expectations were for 3%. So maybe these elevated rates, the elevated cost of spending, finally is starting to weigh on the economy a little bit. It's possible that's what we're starting to see here. We're going to get multiple readings of quarter one GDP, but if they all come in, mild like this one did, it could be a sign that Americans are finally getting the memo. They're finally starting to save more money, spend less money. They might have run out of their financial reserves. They can only work so many hours. They can only go get a second job so many times. It could be a sign that things are starting to cool down with regards to the economy. Not great for the economy, but that would potentially be good for mortgage rates because like I said, the Fed is just super confident right now. Yeah, inflation is stubborn, but people are still getting jobs and people are still working. Like, why would we rush to cut rates when all things are pointing to an economy that's very strong? Well, great. You just got quarter one GDP and it was not strong. So it's entirely possible that Americans are starting to get the memo and are starting to save a little bit more, spend a little less. And almost all of that increase that we saw was services. So it's entirely possible that we are starting to get the memo, which would be good for mortgage rates, good for inflation going forward. Fingers crossed, because like I said, on our current path, there's just no way we're going to get anywhere near what the Fed wants, which is about half of what we'd be at if you took what we've been seeing lately and annualized it. This one's fun. So only if you like drama is it fun. Another episode of Days of Our Congress. So last time I was doing this, the speaker, Mike Johnson, he had passed government spending. We avoided a shutdown not once, not twice, but 3 times. And he did so by reaching across the aisle and passing long-term budgets for the government. Great news there. Well, the rumblings from there was, how dare you reach across party aisles? Now we're going to look to oust you, just like we ousted your predecessor. Well, he kind of doubled down. Mike Johnson kind of doubled down. He said, look, not only am I going to strike compromises with regards to government, the funding of the government, but I'm also going to pass foreign aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And the Freedom Caucus was extremely upset. They immediately started to call for a vote to oust him. Now, the good news there is probably that when he reached across the aisle, not once, but twice, funding the government, passing foreign aid bill, he picked up enough allies where right now, and it's always obviously subject to change, but right now the expectation is that he's got enough support, not only with his current party, but also with the party on the other side of the aisle, that he might have enough support to be able to avoid such a vote. Hopefully that's what's going to happen. Hopefully that the drama kind of simmers down a little bit. It's gotten even a little bit more dramatic than I would like to see, but that's currently where we are. Tune in next month for another episode of Days of Our Congress. We shall see. If you can have a little bit of perspective, it is entertaining. maybe it's as entertaining as gladiator bouts back in the day, but it's entertaining nonetheless. So we shall see what happens there. But yeah, interesting, fascinating stuff. What's going on? All right, so looking at May, my all-time favorite month. May is best. May is the best. Somebody asked me what my favorite season was, and I was like, I can pinpoint it to a month. It's May. I love May. It's beautiful. All right, so jobs reports. We're going to get the first one tomorrow, quite literally tomorrow. We're going to get BLS report on Friday. We're going to get some updated inflation data. Again, there's this tug-of-war match going on. Anything that shows who's winning that tug-of-war match is going to be of the utmost importance, and it's going to be all eyes paying attention to it. All hands on deck, all eyes paying attention to it. It's going to be extremely important. So we're going to continue to watch this tug-of-war match going on and see what's going to happen. The Fed is meeting quite literally right now. They will wrap up their 2-day meeting tomorrow. Expectations, again, are for no rate changes at all. But they will pick apart what the Fed says because they want some guidance on which we expect going forward. So while there's no rate changes expected, their commentary is just as important. So that's kind of what we have on the horizon. Updated inflation data, jobs reports. Again, who's going to win this tug-of-war match? Is it the Doves or is it the Hawks? We shall see. And that is it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any feedback, please let me know. Love feedback. We always take it. We always use it. So thank you all so much. And as always, thank you all so much for the referrals. Lifeblood of my team and I's, our business. We appreciate it. We never take it for granted. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And yeah, I think that's it. If you have any questions, if you need anything, holler at us. Appreciate it. Bye.